Been 12 months exactly to the day since Prime Minister Scott Morrison won the unwinnable election, or, as perhaps better expressed, Bill Shorten lost the unlosable one.
Breaking news, polls have officially opened.
They're shell-shocked as these results are coming in.
There's no way that Scott Morrison can win it, and I'm happy to have that replayed time and time again, to my shame if he does win it.
Something has gone badly wrong with the polling.
Where are Labor going to get these seats? We were told it was going to be a walkover and a wipeout.
This has not been a great night for Labor. They're certainly a long way short of where most of us thought it might have been.
Well, pretty gracious concession speech there from Tony Abbott.
That's a measure of the man. I mean, that was such a masterclass in dignity and grace.
There's a lesson to be learned from this campaign, is that Australians reject the politics of class division.
Continue to serve as the member for Maribyrnong. I will not be a candidate in the next Labor leadership ballot.
Forget the spin, forget the predictions.
No one predicted this result.
I have always believed in miracles.
Scott Morrison has made himself into a Liberal hero.
I don't know about you, but I couldn't, not play that over and over and over again. Let me walk you through some of the numbers in the latest news poll today before I bring in the Australian's political editor, Dennis Shanahan, for his analysis. Popular support for the federal coalition has climbed to its highest level in over 8 months following the pandemic, with the coalition picking up a 2-point lift in its primary vote to 43%, and Labor have had a 1-point fall to 35% on primary. This gives the Morrison government a narrow lead in 2PP terms, 51-49, after being even with Labor just 3 weeks ago. Support for the Prime Minister has remained steady too, with 56% of Australians preferring Scott Morrison over Labor's Anthony Albanese on 29%. Well, it's been an extraordinary 12 months, drought, bushfires, and of course now this virus. I bet Scott Morrison couldn't have dreamt up this sort of trifecta of trouble last year when he thanked supporters on election night, could he, Dennis?
It would have been very hard to predict all that has happened. There was also the floods and the hailstones. So there were all the biblical plagues visited upon the coalition government in Canberra. But I think that what the figures show today, extraordinarily, after 12 months from that miracle win on primary vote, the coalition and the Labor Party are essentially where they were at the election. One Nation is where it was at the election. The Greens are where they were at the election. So after all of this, what we have seen, and during this 12 months, very little change on that primary vote. Yes, the two-party preferred has moved around a bit, and yes, the preferred Prime Minister has moved around a bit. But I think essentially, notwithstanding the COVID crisis and all the rest, what we are seeing is that voters are still saying that wasn't such a surprise to them, that they have held on to their vote, and if the election were to be held tomorrow, we'd get the same result, perhaps even with a slightly improved majority. So the news poll is saying, as it did on election day, that things are very close, but it edges towards the coalition, and the primary vote has held, and it hasn't really improved for Labor.
Well, just a couple of things on that. I think the Prime Minister, this is a high-wire act. Dealing with COVID is a very high-wire act. A lot of the levers are with the states. We'll get to that in a minute in terms of opening up the economy. I think in many respects, the Prime Minister having a bit of trouble in and around the bushfires at the end of last year, start of this year. In fact, I think it has recalibrated his sense of the politics. He's stayed very much in touch with people through this crisis. I think that was a bit of a wake-up call. He won the unwinnable election, and I think there was a bit of arrogance creeping into the persona at least, and that's now been really redressed in this crisis, which is, I think, where some of the numbers have steadied up. And I think he's looking very much now into the recovery piece Talk to me about the states, because they are so important in opening up things. Yes, we're talking about restaurants and things over the weekend. There's all the challenges of public transport. This idea, you know, when you have 12 people on a bus, mate, they don't come along that quickly anyway. Imagine standing there for 4 or 5 hours waiting to be the 13th or 14th person on the bus. These will be the challenges about the economy. And of course, the Commonwealth is still writing big cheques.
Yes, in fact, during the week, I saw some advice from a New South Wales health officer saying, oh, if you're waiting for a train and it seems to be a bit crowded, might be best to wait for the next one. I don't think that health official lives in Penrith and commutes from Central. The trains are just going to be full of people. Yes, people will change. They'll work from home and they'll stagger their work hours as much as possible. But what the states do is crucial to the economic recovery. The government, the federal government, has done everything it can, including a $134 billion JobKeeper program to try and keep the economy afloat and people engaged in jobs. Scott Morrison made it clear all along. He wanted schools back to face-to-face teaching as soon as possible. And when you looked at the numbers, the Treasury numbers, on the impact on the economy, you could see why he wanted that. The impact on the economy of schools not actually sitting was the second largest economic impact on the economy. So there's been a lot of move towards that. But now the states are playing these games about border control. As you mentioned earlier, state elections are going to play a role in this. We've seen a very good approach by the National Cabinet up until now. Of course, the federal government's been handing the money out, but it's now time for the states to really take the burden and take some tough decisions. There is too much fear. It's a real fear, but we have to actually start to say back to work, back to normal.
I can't let it pass that you're down in the Bay, Bateman's Bay, EDEN-MONARO. We expect that the Liberal Party will nominate their candidate, pre-select their candidate on Friday. Labor's candidate is known. I'm not sure where the National Party are. Reports today that there'll be no leadership challenge, that Anthony Albanese is safe should they lose. That's a bit of, placement in the media, I suspect. But also there's concerns that Labor will have trouble funding their campaign. Apparently they may need to borrow money. New South Wales Labor's not in great shape financially, nor is the federal scene. How's this all going to play out? We're told to expect a by-election end of June, early July. What's the feeling on the ground, or are people not even focused on it?
No, I think there's a focus on the recovery. People you talk to in Maruya and Bateman's Bay, Badalla, they are saying, oh, yes, we can feel things are coming back. They're getting a sense of recovery. And so there is a sense of hope in the electorate that things will be restored. Now, I actually think it's a good thing for the Liberals that they will have a homegrown candidate to compete against a Labor homegrown candidate. There isn't a great deal of focus on the by-election. I think there was more notice taken yesterday of Norway's National Day than the prospect of a by-election in EDEN-MONARO. But as time goes on, a focus will shift to it. But it is also clear Labor fears that the COVID crisis will create a program, a schedule that will suit the coalition. The Liberal Party at the last election demonstrated it was a better digital performer than the Labor Party, and the Labor Party fears that now. And the point you make, I mean, it seems to me, here it is, the anniversary of the election of the Morrison government. Anthony Albanese hasn't even been leader for 12 months, and yet there are Labor people making it known he won't face a challenge if he loses the by-election. This is an extraordinary thing to be putting out, and I think that there are divisions appearing within the Labor Party on policy and politics in the lead up to the EDEN-MONARO and the wider economic recovery.
Yeah, look, we saw that with Christina Keneally, but when you get those sorts of comments putting out to say, don't worry about it, he's safe in his job, it always tells you that he's not as safe as you might like to think. Who needs friends like that? Yes, Dennis Shanahan, thanks for your time.